Core Stories, Ordinary Marines, Extraordinary Lives.
Hey y'all, today we get to know Collin Congleton, who is an extraordinary Marine because he showed great courage as a volunteer casualty replacement. That's tough. That's tough duty. Not only does it require a tremendous amount of Marine Corps skill and chops, it's very hard to integrate. And he stuck his hand up to be volunteer from his unit. Also, he is just a gifted marksman. He's not somebody you would want to invite to a marksmanship competition. Don't do it. Don't. And lastly, he is an extraordinary scholar. He has barreled through undergraduate, law school, passed the bar on the first take. Unreal. So this is a two-part podcast because our interview was so wonderful. It just lasted a long time. So I split it up into two. In the first part, we get to know his Marine Corps experience. And it's an extraordinary story. I learned about an incredible episode with Map 7, 325's Map to 7, that I really need y'all to hear. And then the second part will be about extraordinarily innovative ideas he has about communities facing policing issues. He has so much knowledge and experience as a police officer. So anyway, hit subscribe. I'll catch you on the backside and listen to part 2.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to see you.
You as well. So, how I got here, I guess, is maybe not as traditional a path as you may typically get from a lot of Marines. So for me, out of high school, I was actually looking at the Naval Academy. I was very fortunate. I had some, I guess you would say, neighbors that lived down the road from me. This woman was a substitute teacher in my high school, and we got to be friends. I grew up in a very small town, a little 1 square mile town called Butler in northern New Jersey. And so, a small town, we got to be friends, and her husband was a former Marine officer. And I grew up in a lower middle class family. College wasn't really an option unless I could provide that for myself.
Right.
And so they were giving me some guidance, this woman and her husband, and were steering me towards the Marine officer route and the Naval Academy. Helped me to get into the summer seminar down there, and I did all that. And my senior year, while in the application process, I also applied for a Marine Option Naval ROTC scholarship. With that, you apply to college on your own. It's on you to get accepted to a college that offers the program. And I went down to visit University of South Carolina in Columbia, and I just fell in love with the place. And I was very fortunate to get accepted there, and I listed that as my number one choice for the Marine Officer Scholarship, which I also got. I believe it was one of 17 awarded in the state of New Jersey.
Absolutely love it.
I was very, very fortunate. I went down there, and long story that I don't think we have time to get into here, but it didn't work out. I was able to do a DOR because of an injury that I sustained. And I was also having academic issues. I was having a lot of family issues that year, just a lot of stuff going on. And so I went back home to Jersey, and the Marine Corps remained something that I desperately wanted to do. I ended up becoming a cop. I got hired by the Morris County Sheriff's Office when I was 20 years old. And I make it through my probationary period, and I'm finding that I'm just not really thrilled with the job. And at the time, this is now 2003, 2004 time frame, So we're well into Afghanistan and now into Iraq as well. And a local Marine officer, a guy by the name of J.T. Wroblewski, was killed in Iraq. And at the same time, Pat Tillman was killed.
Mhm.
And those things just really, I recall that they really weighed on me. And the way that the law enforcement profession works in New Jersey with civil service, it was, I won't say unheard of, but I couldn't find anybody at the time who went into the military after being on the job. But what I found was that my job would be protected based on the laws for the Guard and Reserve. And so I looked at particularly Pat Tillman's story, and I said to myself, here's a young man who left a multi-million-dollar NFL contract and went and did what he did. I have a far less significant job that will be here when I get back, if I get back. How can I not do this? And I knew that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't give it a shot. And so on my lunch break one day, I walked into a recruiting office and I enlisted in the Marine Corps in the reserves so that I could keep that job. So I went to Parris Island. I was with 3rd Recruit Training Battalion, Platoon 3002, from October of 04 till early January of 05. Right after boot camp, went to infantry school. I was contracted as a machine gunner, 0331. Went to SOI from January through March of 2005. And then I checked into Golf Company's 2nd Battalion, 25th Marines in March of 2005. As fate would have it, and this is how you and I came to know each other, I think, I checked into my unit, and that very first drill, the company gunny, very well-known guy in this area in New Jersey and New York, guy by the name of Gunnery Sergeant Mario Monaco, gets out in front of the company and explains to us that 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines is downrange in Iraq at the time, and they're losing a lot of guys. And they're asking for volunteers to come over as combat casualty replacements. And it was just one of those moments in life that I guess some guys would call it like a coming to God moment. Like, here I am, I just graduated infantry school, I'm just checking into a unit, and here was an opportunity to go do really what I signed up for. I knew I signed up while things were at their height, essentially, in Iraq and Afghanistan. How could I not, at this moment, raise my hand? I would have been ashamed if I didn't. And so I did, and I went with, I want to say it was about 65 guys, maybe, roughly, that all came together down at Camp Lejeune. Some were involuntarily recalled from the IRR. Most were volunteers. I think out of the 65 that showed up down there for like a 6-week rapid deployment training evolution, I think maybe 40 some odd ended up going over.
Finishing.
And so we went and joined 325. When we got on deck over there, most of the guys were assigned to security positions, and they took the handful of us that were weapons MOSs, so machine gunners, mortarmen, assaultmen, and so on, and assigned us to weapons company. And so we were put into what was called at the time MAP teams, mobile assault platoon teams. And again, as fate would have it, I was assigned to K-Bar 7, which was with a bunch of phenomenal guys, including some of the guys that you've interviewed, Corporal Corbin, Corporal Schuler, now I believe Captain Schuler, just some incredible men. Those two earned the Navy Cross and the Silver Star for action just a couple weeks before I got there. And
When did you arrive in theater?
I got over there in July of 2005. So the incident at Haditha Dam had happened just prior.
Haditha Hospital.
Yeah.
Haditha Hospital was in May. So
Yeah.
it was just, I kind of have to stop and interrupt you here because for those who are listening and not watching, I'm trying so hard to hold back tears here. I'm ruining my makeup because it's a extraordinarily tragic season for the Marine Corps. This was you were assigned to the unit that had the most casualties in the entire war.
Yeah.
And you were assigned there after a series of horrific events. It wasn't just May. It was in March, May, June. So there were a number of that battalion just had no relief. I think in the end they lost 48
Marines and sailors killed in action, and probably, and this is an estimate, I think it was over 100 Purple Hearts in addition to those that were KIA. Yeah.
And so just to give the listeners some background there, just regarding Collin and I. So I didn't know anything about it because it was the battalion, as you say, kind of grew and shrunk and grew and shrunk. There are people in and out and to tell you the truth, that K-Bar 7 event at the Haditha Hospital just was like the deep black hole of my writing career. It was so intense, research and writing. But that event, as you say, there was a Navy Cross for Todd Corbin and a Silver Star for Jeff Schuler, and they both remained. So they were there when you got there, even though either one of them I think they both received Purple Hearts, but either one of them could have said, I'm done, I'm out of here. And they didn't, they stayed. And so when I met you and I talked to Jeff Schuler about you, who never says anything nice about anybody, he said, oh, Collin, he's like the best marksman. I'm like, what? Did you actually say that? And he said, yeah, he was given the 50 caliber right upon arrival, which is just like, I'm like, oh my golly, I'm in the presence of royalty here. So the fact that you made that impression with these extraordinarily seasoned Marines, combat Marines, especially, and that their legacy didn't end there. So that just the listeners really needed to know that about you. And I knew you wouldn't put it in, so I had to put it in.
Again, one of those things that you look back and it was clearly just a fate kind of thing. I arrive in theater, I get assigned to that team, which was a tremendous stroke of luck. I mean, some of the most phenomenal Marines you could ever hope to serve with. Todd Corbin was, like myself, a sheriff's deputy. And
remains. Now he's sheriff.
And now, right. And Schuler, this all-American wrestler from Ohio State, and all the guys in the team were just phenomenal. There were incredible. There was an incredible writer. There were family men. There were just this incredible compilation of young men that just had tremendous impact on me. And I get there, and within, I think it was the first week that I was there, that team was assigned as the PSD when that was required, the personal security detail for the battalion commander, sergeant major, any incoming VIPs. And one day, very early on, the sergeant major needed to go to a FOB out in Hitt, in the city of Hitt. Mm-hmm. We were operating out of Camp Hitt, and this guy, Randy Idiaquez, who was a young junior Marine, Lance Corporal. And this, I struggled with this for a long time, but Iddy, as we called him, took my seat in a truck. He bumped me back to a 7-ton. The way the map teams were set up was you had 3 Humvees and a 7-ton. And he took what was my seat in this Humvee to sit with the sergeant major. And that truck ended up getting hit by a suicide bomber, a van laden with explosives driven by what we estimated to be about a 12-year-old boy, and Itty was wounded in that incident. And at the time, being an outsider and a boot PFC, I got promoted to Lance Corporal later in August, so I was as boot could be. And Itty quickly befriended me, just being the kind of man that he is, where all these guys were so tight after being through so many horrific things together already. I was definitely an outsider. And while my heart was in the right place in joining them, I hadn't earned my place among them yet. And Itty, with no regard for that, just wanted to treat me good. And
Love it. Yeah. I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sure. Yeah.
So in that incident, the Marine that had been one of the turret gunners, guy by the name, and this is going back now 15 years, and I haven't seen him since, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but I believe his name was Jay Monkelbaum. He was injured in that incident, had his eardrums blown out, and some other injuries. So I went to the platoon sergeant, and I said, I'm a school-trained machine gunner. I know the 50 very well. I know all the weapon systems, the 240, the Mark 19. If you're going to have to shuffle some guys around, or if you just need me to step into that role, I would be happy to do it. And that's what ended up happening. So I took over the position as the 50 cal turret gunner on the number 2 truck in the team, and I remained there for the rest of that deployment. And we went through, the team had been through quite a bit prior to my arrival, and we went through quite a bit in the brief time that I was there, from about July through October. I think we left September 30th. We got back to Lejeune, I think, right on the 1st of October. And by that time, it was, as you touched on, it was 48 KIA from that battalion, which was a huge number.
Well, it was huge, and it was, as I say, the worst for any unit. But it was these massive losses in one event. Like,
yeah, 6-man sniper team killed in one event. I believe it was 14 killed in another event where a V went over a double-stacked anti-tank mine. There were numerous incidents like that. The majority of those killed during that deployment were from IEDs, which was very frustrating, because as Marines, we are more than happy to engage in combat. That's our reason for existence. That's our purpose. And to engage in a firefight is one thing, and I think something that most Marines would say they welcome.
yes.
But to get hit with an IED and then have no way of hitting back was incredibly frustrating. So that was difficult. But so that was my first deployment. I came back to 225, checked in to weapons platoon and golf company back there as a machine gunner. I was there until summer of 2007, when I went through the application process for the battalion's state platoon, scout sniper platoon, and I was accepted to that, and transferred up to H&S Company at Garden City, Long Island, and stepped into the state platoon. I stayed there until I got out in 2012. We deployed in 2008, 2009, by which time I was a corporal and eventually promoted to sergeant. Served in a variety of roles there as a training NCO, and ultimately when I got out, I was a scout sniper team leader. And for any of the guys from the sniper community that might hear this, I have to say this. I was a proud pig. I was not a hog.
You're going to have to break that down, unpack that for our listeners.
So in the sniper community, kind of like in the rest of the Marine Corps, you have grunts and pogues, and that sometimes is an important distinction. Yeah. In the scout sniper community in the Marine Corps, you have pigs and hogs. A pig is a professionally instructed gunman. A HOG is a hunter of gunmen. To earn the coveted title of HOG, you have to graduate from the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School and earn your HOG's tooth. And the school seats are tough to come by, particularly in the reserves. And I had at one point a school seat. I got injured and wasn't able to go to the schoolhouse. When we came back from deployment, we went to the bottom of the list for school seats, and I ended up getting out before I ever got to go to school for the school. I was very, very fortunate in that the senior Marines in the platoon, all of whom were school-trained snipers, all of whom were HOGs. One in particular, Jason Delgado, who's got a great book out. He was actually a sniper instructor for MARSOC in their early days, and he was one of the guys who put a lot of time into training me and put me into that position of sniper team leader. Everything in that community is based on merit, and so it's something I'm very proud to be able to say that I was able to serve in that role. But it's important, as I said, for anybody from that community who might be listening to make that known, because it is an important distinction. So
I see your four-legged friend behind you, and he's scouting something back there.
Yeah, that's Astra. She's a puppy still. Yeah, got her in January, so she's only about 6 months old. So yeah, she was a rescue. She's a pit mix, but she looks very much like Black Lab. Yeah,
she's got that snout, so I can see her hunting. She's a hunter.
Yeah,
I love it. Okay, so we have this image of you as this sheriff's deputy, Marine, sniper extraordinaire is how you're known in the. Oh, it's true. Stop it. Listen, if Schuler said it, come on now, how that goes. So for listeners, Jeff Schuler, he's not perfect, but he is an icon. He has done an awful lot. A lot of different roles in the Marine Corps, but also he was really bulletproof that day that he was in the turret.
I implore anybody who listens to this to
just
go
look him up.
Look at his story. It is amazing, and
it's miraculous.
It really is. And you say he's not perfect, but as Marines go, he is as close to a role model and as you said, an icon.
He's an icon.
As any Marine you'll find. I mean, he's just amazing. And
he really is.
Hear what he apparently said to you is quite humbling, and it was one of the greatest privileges of my life to be able to serve next to him and the rest of the men in that team.
Yeah. So you're thinking of Mayer. We were talking about Schuler. You're thinking of Mayer. Yeah. Absolutely. Mayer is the writer, I believe you were talking about. Another one of the Hadiza Hospital ambush heroes. Total. I mean, it was just you read about it. I did the most research on that event of any Marine Corps writer, but
I think you'll agree with this. It's a damn shame that he wasn't recognized more appropriately for what he did that day. I think that his Valor Award should have been higher. Yeah, and I think that could be said for all of them. And I think anybody who looks at the Navy Cross citation for Todd Corbin would look at that and say
Medal of Honor, right? And also for Kalinowski, I think that we all signed on to an upgrade for Cal because he was the one with his dominant hand completely destroyed in that event, feeding ammo to Schuler, who held off the enemy long enough for Corbin to collect everybody and get that 7-ton rolling out of there.
Yeah,
so it's an amazing story, but basically the story is that they were called out to the hospital because the hospital was under attack, and then they were trapped by the insurgents, and this suicide van, as you were describing, happening so many times, was what took out but in the end, so and then 4 were dead, 16 Purple Hearts, a Navy Cross, Silver Star, and 3 or 4 Bronze Stars. I can't remember how many. So yeah, it is a huge compliment from Schuler. Stan Mayer definitely deserved an upgrade. So did Kalinowski, and probably a number of others. But in the end, I can see why you were so proud to be with that unit, even though from my perspective, I didn't know you then, I would have been shaking in my boots the entire time after you arrived and before you all shipped home, because it was they had such a target on their back.
Yeah. Well, if you step back and, look at the big picture, and in the big scheme of things, I'm so grateful for that time. It was without a doubt the worst and most difficult time in my life, but also the best. And I think many Marines who served in combat would quickly understand this. It gave me perspective for so many other situations in my life, and it prepared me for other things. The difficult things that you go through are usually, I think, the most important. And I mean, man, that was a hell of a time. And we went through a lot together, but we survived it. And that just, I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for the example that those men set for me when I was a young man at a time in my life where I was trying to figure it out.
Now, but not a lot of, you have really had a different path, an unusual path since then.
Yeah.
So that's what intrigued me for this podcast, is that so many Marines have served with such valor, like you and the people but it's not that frequent when the education subsequent to combat becomes so precious to you. So talk about that journey.
Sure.
Check here. Yeah.
So we get back in 05, late in 05, and at the time I was working for the Morris County Sheriff's Office in New Jersey, which is a kind of a suburban and in some parts rural area. For a number of reasons, I'll just say I was not satisfied with where I was at. And so I looked to make a move, and I ended up going out to Jersey City, to the police department there. And Jersey City is a tough town. So much better fit for me. And that it was at the same time that I ended up going over to State Platoon. Both happened in the summer of 07. So I ended up getting out of the Marine Corps in 2012, and I had some GI Bill benefits. And I had that 1 year of college under my belt that I didn't finish, and that for me was something on my bucket list, if you will. It was, something I felt compelled to finish. And so, and obviously I didn't want my GI Bill benefits to go to waste. So I enrolled in classes in 2012. I was 30. At the time, I was going on just about 10 years on the job as a cop. Went to New Jersey City University in Jersey City. Excuse me one second. I'm just gonna. Yeah. So I went to NJCU, pursued a Bachelor's of Science in National Security Studies. I graduated in 2015, and so it was about 2.5 years it took me to bang out my bachelor's.
Working full time.
I was working full time at the time. I was in our street crimes unit in the Violent Crime Squad in Jersey City. So we were getting after it, and I was going to school full time. But again, like I said before, the perspective that I gained from that deployment in 2005 and from my experience in the Marine Corps overall, my idea of what difficult is, or what work is perhaps different than your average person.
It altered that.
Yeah. I mean, it's all relative, but having been a grunt and a combat vet, going to school wasn't that hard. So I finished up there, and I still had about 1.5 years of GI Bill benefits remaining. And I found that I liked school. I liked learning. I felt that it made me better. It made me better as a cop and better as a human. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I felt very strongly. I saw up close some of the losses experienced by 325, and in a number of incidents like the one with Idiot, there was this sense that that very easily could have been me and perhaps should have been. And so I felt a deep obligation to make the most of the gift that was given to me
Take your time.
by those Marines who didn't come home, to earn that and to not squander it. And that's been a powerful motivator for me, to just do everything I can to get the most out of the life that they gave to me, and to honor them and to honor the sacrifices that they made. And so pursuing my education, I saw as just one of those things. So when I finished undergrad, I was looking at master's programs, and a very good friend of mine, a guy that I'm still real close with today, by the name of Ari Moss. He's currently a captain in the NYPD. We were police academy classmates. He went through the academy with me in New Jersey and went to work for West Orange PD, and then later left and went to NYPD. But he had just finished law school, and he said, you should really apply to law school. And I said, you're out of your mind. There's no way I would get into law school. I'm just some grunt. I couldn't even fathom such a thing. And Ari is a brilliant guy and knew exactly how to motivate a Marine. He goes, yeah, you're right. You probably couldn't get in.
Hey, y'all. Do we love Collin so far? I mean, he's kind of the first half. Second half, maybe even better. Anyway, check it out, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Core Stories, Ordinary Marines, Extraordinary Lives.